I'm Guy Parmenter. It's Friday, April the 12th, 2019, and I'm here at Roselawn with Mary Siniard to discuss the history of Roselawn. Good morning, Mary. Could you tell us a little about your background in life and how you came to be associated with Roselawn?
Sure. I was born in a small mill village in Floyd County, Shannon, Georgia. And I had two siblings already. There was four of us. And all are deceased, of course, now. And then I went to Plainville, Georgia for my first year of school. And we moved to Adairsville in my second year, and I stayed there to graduate. And then my first job was in Atlanta, and I came back to Cartersville after a year and a half. And I met my husband here, and we were married in 1955. We had 3 children, and all of them attended Cartersville High School. And through the years, I've been fairly active in civic affairs.
So how did you become associated with Roselawn?
In 1986, Jimmy Davis, who was curator, called me and asked me if I would be interested in being director at Roselawn. And having had a heart attack 3 years earlier and told not to go to work, I thought about that. My husband and me talked about it, and I decided that I was tired of staying home. That just wasn't for me because I'd always been busy. So we decided that I would, and I stayed 13 years here and retired in 1999.
Very good. Tell us about Sam Jones. Who was Sam Jones?
Sam Jones was an evangelist, and he preached all over the United States and Canada. And when he would go into a city to preach, they would have to get the largest building that they could find, whether it was a warehouse or whatever. And of course, he would preach to as many as 5,000. And during his time as preacher, I believe they said he preached to 250 million people in that 30 years that he preached. And he had I think 200,000 converts. I mean, it was a tremendous amount. So when he died, his body did lie in state, which was out of the ordinary for a common, man.
And lie in state, was he in here at Roselawn at one time, but he was in the state capitol, Rotunda, for a while?
He was here at Roselawn, yes.
Before he went to the state capitol?
Yes, before he went to Atlanta, he was here. Actually, when they brought him from the train, there was a whole line of people coming from the railroad over here, and she just invited them in the house to see his body, and this went on for hours. What
specific room did he lie in state in?
I think it was this one.
This room?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Well, tell us a little about the history of Sam Jones. Well, you said the history of Sam Jones. How did he arrive in Cartersville? What made Cartersville his home?
Sam was born in Oak Bowery, Chambers County, Alabama, and when he was 9 years old, his mom passed away. And then he and his 2 brothers and sisters went to live with their grandfather, who was Samuel Gamble Jones, his namesake. And John Jones, that was a lawyer, his father, he came to Cartersville, and then he brought the children here. In the meantime, John had married Jenny Skinner of Cartersville.
All right. Do you know approximately where they lived at that time?
They lived over on Gilmer Street.
All right. And then let's just progress a little forward with Sam Jones's life from that point, if you can.
I think one of the most interesting things, of course, he was a young man, and Sherman was coming through Georgia at that time, and they had already burned Cassville. And Jenny Skinner, the stepmother, had heard, well, John Jones had called her, and he had already joined up with the Confederate. And he called her and told her that Sherman would be through Cartersville and that she needed to get out. So she told Sam, said, they had a livery stable. John Jones had a livery stable. And so Jenny told Sam, said, you go take care of the horses. And of course, Sam, doing whatever he wanted to do most of the time, Jenny had told him, said, I'll get ready and I'll meet you. Well, he took another route home, and Jenny couldn't wait for him, so she went on south. And when Sam came home, there was nobody there. So he knew Sherman was coming, and he went north. And he was there for about 4 years, and actually that's where he met his wife, Laura McElvain. And he came back to Cartersville and finished high school, and even studied law. And after 4 years, he and Laura had been corresponding, and they got married, and she came to Cartersville. And he had a terrible, terrible time with, his drinking. And he had lost he was admitted to the bar. And then he lost his job, so to speak, because of his drinking. And he had to pick up any kind of job that he could take care of his wife. Actually, he worked shovel coal at one of the foundries here in Cartersville.
Now, you talked about his drinking problem and so forth. What brought that to an end?
His father. On his father's dying bed, he called him his wicked, wayward son and asked him to quit drinking. And Sam Jones said, I'll quit. And he reiterated that 4 times. And he did. And he tried law again, but he decided that in a week's time, I find this interesting, he preached his first sermon at his grandfather's church here in Cartersville. And so he went on from there. He was invited to North Georgia Conference, Episcopal Methodist Church South, to join in that conference. And they assigned him to the Van Wert Circuit, which was the poorest circuit in the district. And then after he had 5 churches. And at the end of his term there with the Van Wert district, he was appointed to the orphanage in Decatur. And the morning that he started down, or the night before the morning that he started down, Laura said to him, if you go south in the morning, I'm going north in the afternoon. So she did not want him to do that. So sometime during the night, it seems like that God had come to her in some manner. So when he got up, she was already up and had breakfast for him and told him that whatever he did, that she would be behind him. And she did that for the rest. They had 7 children. 6 of them lived. And she was always here taking care of the home, taking care of the children, and he did traveling. She did very little traveling with him.
Now, after the circuit in the North Georgia, Van Wert, and the others, basically, he what was the catalyst then to move him north to say, to New York and to Nashville and so forth?
His preaching, he was such a dynamic speaker, and everywhere he went, you know, I told you there'd be as many as 20,000 people. He always was there a week to 5 weeks, wherever he went. And for instance, he was at Faneuil Hall in Boston 4 weeks. And I'm happy to say I got to visit Faneuil Hall when I was on my East Coast trip. So he was also in Canada. And he just had huge revivals wherever he went. And Tom Ryman, the Ryman Auditorium was built for Sam Jones to preach in. Sam and Tom were friends, so he had asked Tom to come to revival, but Tom wasn't interested in that because he had these steamboats and bars and everything. So Sam kind of conned him in to come to hear him preach one night. And he knew his weakness was his mother. So she was the subject of that sermon.
Well, I remember hearing that story, and that, what was it, the Union Gospel Tabernacle was built out of that from funds raised in the community.
Ryman.
That was Ryman
Auditorium was built out of that.
Now, wasn't it renamed after Ryman died? When didn't Sam Jones ask for the name to be changed to the Ryman? Or in memory of Ryman?
Yeah, he did. And it was, as you say, just a tabernacle, Union Gospel Tabernacle. And at his death, because he had built it for Sam, so he wouldn't have to preach in a warehouse. That's what he'd been preaching in. But Tom Ryman also did the funds to build Roselawn. They had asked Laura and him to come to Nashville. And Laura didn't want to go. She liked her home here. And she had the little cottage, so they said, okay, if you're not coming to Nashville, we're going to build you the kind of house you need. So that's when, in 1895, they raised the little cottage up at a cost of $110. And they built the ground floor and the basement under it for Sam Jones. Now, he did not get to enjoy that, very long because he died in 1906. But it was the hub of the community, just the social place to be.
Well, he was a remarkable person. During, I was trying to think when it seems like in 1885, 86, when he did do his first preaching in Nashville, is when basically before the tabernacle was built and so forth. That's when he really got his notoriety nationwide.
Yes, actually, his first, I think, memorable revival would have been Louisville. That was the one that he had mentioned. And then the one in Nashville, that just did it for him. That was the catalyst for him. That after that, he went everywhere. I mean, it was back to Louisville, Texas, Arkansas, Boston, New York. He preached at the Brooklyn Tabernacle in Brooklyn, New York, I think for 2 or 3 weeks. But he was all over the United States and Canada.
Now, at that time, since we didn't have airplanes, he had to take the train or carriage.
Yes.
So basically, he was gone, from what I read, could be as much as 40 weeks a year.
Oh, yeah.
And that didn't sit too well with Laura, did she?
No. But she had already promised him, when he was appointed to our orphanage in Decatur, that whatever he did, wherever he went, she would be behind him 100%. But now she was sick a lot, during that time. And I'd probably been sick too if I'd had 6 children that I had to watch all the time. But she went with him on his, well, you may not be ready to get into that, but she was with him in Oklahoma. And they got on the train and started home, and that's when he passed away.
When did, come back on Roselawn, when did they actually purchase Roselawn?
In 1885.
And who built Roselawn?
Nelson Gilruth built, well, actually, he didn't build Roselawn, but he built the first portion of Roselawn, which was a 1-room house, pine house. And then they added 2 rooms, which made it 3 rooms. And then when some of Nelson's, his daughter, his niece, one of the 2 married, and they moved in that little 3-room pine house. And they started building on and made it the cottage that Sam and Laura bought in 1985.
All right, the name Roselawn, where did it come from?
Of course, the roses that was on there, but when it was raised, it was dedicated to the Lord, and Laura named it Roselawn then.
All right. Now, we talked about how when Sam Jones died, he was brought back and he lay in state both here and at the state capitol.
As I said before, she didn't travel with him a lot, but on this occasion, he had insisted that she go with him. And she says in the Lives and Sayings of Sam Jones that that was the nicest time that they had had in many, many years. It was really quiet, and that she really enjoyed it. And that was God's way of giving her, a special time with him.
Sure.
And he, when they left Oklahoma and got on the train, he passed away in Perry, Arkansas. And they actually embalmed him there and draped the train in black. And that's what all those people that was on the railroad saw when the train pulled in, was that black draped train.
Now I know the community honored him, especially the Cartersville Methodist Episcopal Church. They were rebuilding their sanctuary, and they renamed it Sam Jones Memorial United Methodist Church at that time. Now, Sam Jones is deceased now. Laura's got the house. She lives for what, another 19 or 20 years?
1926, 20 years.
20 years. And I understand she was quite a businesswoman during that time.
Oh, yes. We all kind of laugh every once in a while because she was always sick. As I said, not that she was sick, but the fact that Sam died 20 years young before she did. That she lived 20 years after he did.
Well, you think she was kind of bitter because she'd missed him all the years while he was on the road
probably,
preaching?
Yeah.
And now I've been left with a lot of children
and
a lot of investments and so forth. That was an interesting story. So good reading. What books, I know there's some books here at Roselawn for sale. What are the best books for anybody to read?
Life and Sayings Sam Jones is wonderful. So I would encourage anybody that wanted to know about Sam to read that book. And then you might want to read the one that I liked that he wrote was Quit Your Meanness. He was very humorous and a good orator. And everybody, all the teachers that had him just said that he would be great, as he grew older, that he was destined to be great.
Now, Laura Jones is deceased. What happens to the house?
Laura Jones died in 1926, and in 1927, E. Dargan Cole bought the house at a cost of $14,000. And he and his bride, Marie, moved in, and about 3 years, Dargan died. And she, after a few months, married Madison Bell. And then Madison died, and she married Guy Parmenter.
My grandfather.
Yeah, your grandfather. And Mr. Parmenter didn't like living here, so he wanted to live in his home in the Echo area. And Marie stayed some out there, and she decided that she just could not do that. She wanted to come back to her Roselawn. So she came back to Roselawn and was, then Guy died.
He died in 59.
Yes, 1959. And they stayed really good friends. In fact, they had been to an Easter gathering, and he had come back here and was sitting in the game room, which I don't know if this room that we're in
I think it was
the game room.
Yeah, he was. Let me interject. I was talking to my brother the other day. Supposedly, of course, he died in March. On Easter Sunday, late March of 1959. Now, he had been to lunch with my brother and myself, and of course with my parents, and we'd been out the country club, and we, at that time, we were debating whether Marie was with us, and his opinion was that she was not, and the more I thought about it, I didn't think she was either. So I think the last 2 years of her life, basically, she was having trouble walking and getting around, so she did not go out there with us that day. She had been with us other days out at the country club, and not that particular day. So after lunch, my grandfather left, and he came over here. My daddy went to play golf, and Mother took Scott and I home. And probably around 2:30, she got the phone call that needed Sherman, my daddy, and get him off the golf course, that he had passed here, just killed over on the sofa. And according to Scott's got a good memory on his history stuff. But anyway, he said she had gotten up to leave the room. When she came back, found him dead. But that was be 50 years ago this year, on Easter. And Easter in that year was end of March.
Yeah.
So, interesting.
And then Marie was, she opened the house to all kinds of social events. And during the war, she had the carriage house, and they had dances down there. So she would have big tubs filled up with ice and Coke for the young people that they invited. And she also organized the Cartersville Service League, which is still an organization. I think the first Magnolia Garden Club meeting was held here. But Marie died in 1968.
Mm-hmm. Now, she also had the name of the street out here changed in 45, I believe.
It was Market Street. Mm-hmm. And with, getting papers signed, they got it changed to Cherokee Avenue.
Right. She wanted to honor the Cherokee Indians and didn't want a name that sounded like a business district when she was in a residential.
No. She thought Market Street sounded like a business district.
Now, I mentioned earlier that I was looking in Lucy Cunya's History of Bartow County because Mary was a Gilreath. And we mentioned Nelson Gilreath was the one who built the original cottage. And so I knew there had to be some connection there. Now, according to Lucy Cunya's in that book, that basically Mary was a niece of Nelson Gilreath.
That built.
Correct.
That built Roselawn.
Because he came over from South Carolina in the 1830s along with 5 or 6 of his brothers, and one of the brothers was her father. When Mary was here, what changes? Did she make changes to this house?
She did. She added an elevator, which is in this room there. And then there was a fireplace in the dining room on the south wall. And she had that removed. And they did a beautiful, beautiful job of putting that wainscoting back in to match what was already there. Mm-hmm. Then, let's see, what else did she, seemed like there was something else that she did to it.
Did I read something about a fireplace?
That was it, the
Really?
fireplace that
Okay.
she removed, but I was thinking that there was something else. But if I think about that, I'll bring that up.
All right. After Marie's death, what happened to the house?
Okay, the house stood vacant for several years, and there Gaddis, that had read to Marie after she lost most of her eyesight, she was over here and saw this house, this grand old house, and it was just, run down, and it just broke her heart. So she said, she made a vow, I'm going to see if I can raise money to restore this house. So she started on this campaign, and somebody from the courthouse, I don't know if it was Frank or Olin, that appointed her to be chairman over the fundraising. Mm-hmm. And of course they did all kinds of fundraisers. Now I know before I came to Roselawn, I was here in the house. It had no furniture in it, but different organizations did things like, I know our garden club would come over here, Stylesboro Improvement Club, and we would come over here at Christmas time, and they did Christmas trees around the world. And that was a very interesting, thing for them to do. And then the Magnolia Garden Club, they had their shows, here, flower shows, mm-hmm. at Roselawn. And I was invited from the Stylesboro Improvement Club to do a flower arrangement here at one time. And I didn't do it with the rest of the people that were entering the show, but they put us in the little kitchen area there. And we did it in where the built-in china cabinet is there.
Who took over after you left? Did they have the same? You were director. Who came next? Do you know?
Stephen Ellis.
Stephen Ellis.
Yeah, after I was here 13 years, and then Stephen came in.
Jane Drew's been here a while.
16 years.
16 years.
Yes. Done a marvelous job.
She has,
Yeah.
and really appreciate her allowing us to come
Mm-hmm.
here today and film. Now, at what point did the Roselawn Arts Festival come along?
Yeah.
Was that part of the money making
That was
for
part
Roselawn?
of that was part of the fundraiser to get the house restored. And then this is interesting. One of the fundraisers was that they had mock deeds, and they sold these school children mock deeds, 1 inch of the property of Roselawn for 50 cents.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk about the property next door to the east of Roselawn House. That was a house there that was the home of Emory Dargan Cole Jr. And I'm under the understanding that property originally, not including the house, was part of the Roselawn property, part of the property that Sam Jones had bought originally, in addition to the land where this particular house is, where Roselawn is. I always heard, though, that basically then Mary let Dargan have the house, the land over there to build his home on, and that she had a room on this east side, her bedroom, and that she could kind of watch over what her son what was going on in her son's house next door. Now, that's what I've always heard through the years. Have you heard something similar?
Absolutely, and I'm thinking that while they were here, that's when Dargan built that house, because from what I understand, that Dargan, when the house stood vacant and vandals had vandalized it and taken, the brass and things out of it, and it was just kind of in ruins, he had the deed to it. So he gave them time to raise the money, gave them spent extra time to raise the money, like 5 years.
Right.
And so I'm sure that he had been established since Marie was married to the Cole.
Right.
Yeah.
To Roselawn Cole, I believe, was his first wife, and then she died younger.
Yes.
And remarried.
Yes.
And they had 2 children, Dargan Jr., Dargan III, and Lucy Cole.
Right.
There. So good friends of my parents, and Lucy was the same age as I was. I was talking to a friend the other day, and he was telling me that in her last years when she was here, when she snapped her fingers and she wanted you over here, you get over here.
Yeah.
And so she had a lot of people scheduled for certain times just to come over and visit, and they did. So.
But a lot of the people that knew her, in talking to Vera Gaddis, that I told you read to her, she said that she was also a very kind lady.
She was.
Yeah.
She was nice to me.
Yeah.
I don't remember a lot about
Yeah.
her because I was so young.
Yeah.
I was probably 6 or 7 when she died, and so it just, no, I was older than that. I was in high school. So, but it's still, I did not visit her much because I had other grandparents that I attended to and spent time with me and so forth. So anyway, she was a remarkable woman and well known.
But I think we bypassed one of the important things that happened during Sam's tenure here in Cartersville was the building of the tabernacle.
Correct.
And there was really great revivals with lots of people here.
And I think he spent his own money to build that. I read something like
Yeah,
$8,000
he did.
or so.
He did. And actually, when Sam died, they tried having the revivals. And I think it started off, people attended, and then it just slacked off less and less. And they finally sold it. I think it might be interesting for people that's not familiar with Cartersville, and probably some of the residents here in Cartersville would like to know where the tabernacle sat, and it was where our civic center and the library is now.
There is, the sign still there, the state historical marker? Still there, kind of
still
marking
there.
approximately the spot.
Then they built the girls' school over that later became the high school.
Right.
But he intended that for young ladies to go to school. That just did not seem to work out.
They got into a lot of legal issues and money issues. It was constructed, but by that time it was in debt. There wasn't enough money really to pay all the debtors involved in that process of constructing it. There were a number of people that were dissatisfied, and their expected enrollment wasn't going to bring in enough money to pay back all the investors in that particular school. So it was the city of Cartersville. It really bailed all the investors out, but they bought it for like 25 cents on the dollar, is what I understand, and it became the new Cartersville High School. And so the female college was no more, but I don't think it ever had a student in it. It never operated. And the new high school lasted for many years up until 1951. But we're going from a time which was probably around 1896, 97, when that college was actually built before it was turned over. the new high school being over on Church Street, but it's been expanded many times now, so we have a really large high school in the same place and citizens like that. Now, the old high school, also known as the female college, it became, after 51, basically, it became a junior high school for the 7th and 8th graders. And I remember attending school there during the 7th and 8th grade. And of course, my mother remembers going to high school there, and her brother, Leon, who's deceased, but he was the first class to move over to the new high school in 1951. And as class president, he got to break ground with the shovel for the photo op for the school when it was being built. But then they went over there, they changed to 12 grades. And as I told him, I'm sorry. So he had to go an extra year. Now, has the Jones family, they've been involved somewhat with the this house through the years, have they not?
They had a reunion after it was stored. They started having a reunion every year. And then they stopped that for a while. They didn't have it every year. It was like every other year.
I talked to Jane, and she informed me that the Jones family had ceased to come over here a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Now there is a museum upstairs today,
Yes.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
Which was the Sam Jones Museum, a lot of
Yeah.
artifacts given by the
Yeah.
family through the years.
Okay, there's two more museums. Rebecca Latimer Felton, she was Sam's school teacher, and she's one of the ones that said that she gave you something to memorize, and a lot of kids would have a really hard time. Sam was right on it, and you could give him something that morning, you could do it that afternoon. Mm-hmm. And she said that he was destined to be great. And then we had the Daughters of the American Revolution. They also have their museum upstairs.
Well, I didn't realize that. So you've got basically 3 different museums upstairs here in Roselawn.
Sam Jones, Rebecca Latimer Felton, who was first U.S. woman senator. She was not an elected senator, but she served her husband's time after his death. And she did not seek re-election because she knew the plight of women during that era.
Yes, I read that. She
Yeah.
spoke really one day, and
Yeah.
they gave her the floor.
Yeah.
Because before they just didn't recognize women for the
No,
most part.
no,
But
they
they let her have her speech, and
Yeah.
then she gently
Yeah.
walked out. So, but she was appointed.
Great lady.
She was appointed. She was. A lot of history here
Yeah.
in Bartow County. What are some of the memorable events that happened here or have happened here during your tenure as director?
Well, of course, we have weddings and reception, and we had the first Rose Ball here at Roselawn, and Clarence Brand presented Jimmy Davis, curator, that had done a marvelous job with restoration. He presented her with a handmade crystal rose pen, and that was an exciting time. But I enjoyed my time here, just weddings, receptions, all types of social functions. And I had Tipper Gore. They called us and said Tipper was coming by, and they were having the arts and crafts at the same time, and we had roped off so she could get in without being, anything interrupted. And Jimmy had asked me to make some tea cakes. Well, the Secret Service came in and saw the tea cakes sitting on the dining table, and they immediately said that she couldn't have any. And the Secret Service went upstairs, and they found a little safety pin that somebody had dropped or something, and they were so excited about that they wouldn't let nobody else could get in the house while Tipper was in here. They closed Roselawn down, and we're open for tours at that time, but nobody could get in. And people were a little bit aggravated. One lady said to me, well, I came just to take the tour, and they wouldn't even let me in the house. But I thought that was interesting. When I was here, my 13 years, and Jane probably will say the same thing, we had people from all over the world. We had people from Holland. Actually, I even had somebody here from from Queen Elizabeth's staff over there. And so I've had, people from everywhere. And they knew more about Roselawn than the people up the street. Those people up the street had never even been in Roselawn. In fact, I had, during my time here, I had people say, well, I've been here for 40 years and I've never been in this house. But I enjoyed all of my time here.
Well, let me also bring up, since I know this is part of the oral history, as part of the Etowah Valley Historical Society project. We've lost a lot of old homes in this neighborhood, especially with the building of the Frank Moore Administration Center. There was at least, I think, 3 or 4 houses over there, one of them being the home of the Etowah Valley Historical Society one time, the Walford Hall White House, which actually burned, belonged to the city, and the city took it down. But however, the others are no longer with us. So I know a lot of the furnishings came over to Roselawn, and I think and also I think the cornerstone of the Sam Jones Female College. I think one of the mayors had put it on us over there, and we moved it back over here.
Yeah, a lot of the furnishings from EVHS, I think you just said, but
and those were donations too from
yeah,
various people.
Are here in Roselawn.
Now, a lot of other acquisitions are obviously here because
Yeah.
Historical Society didn't have all the furnishings that you
Yeah.
have today.
Yeah.
So do people continue now to just keep donating?
I think so. And talking to Jane just a little bit ago, she told me they had a new couch out here in the hall that somebody had given them. It was Victorian, and it looks beautiful out there.
It does. The whole place looks beautiful.
It does.
I'm glad it's
it does.
preserved the way it is, and hope it will continue to be here hundreds of years from now. Anything else you'd like to add before we close?
I've probably forgotten a dozen things that I wanted to tell you, but offhand I can't. If you have any questions, just...
I can't remember anything else to add. I'm like you. It's a lot of things have gone on through the years here, and I don't think we'll ever think of all of them. We'll still remember years from now.
Well, Roselawn will always be near and dear to my heart. When I first came, it had a kind of cold feeling. It hadn't been anybody in the house for a long time. And then after 6 months, it began to have its own little personality. So I enjoyed that, and I hope it's going to be, here and preserved for many, many years.
I'm going to ask this one last question, and this is simple. Is this house haunted? I've read that.
No.
Some people bring it up. If you ever...
When we had the arts and crafts show, and the children would come in, the very first place they would go is flying upstairs. They wanted to see the headless woman. Now, I had not heard that before I came to Roselawn, but there is no ghost in this house, I guarantee you.
All right. Well, excuse me for asking that question, but I had to do it. I
You're
read
not
it
the
in
first,
several
You're not the first
sources.
person. And even some of the children would come in, they'd pay their money to come in, and then they'd come back over here because they wanted to see if she'd showed up.
Oh, me, the stories that can go around.
That's right.
Thank you, Mary, for allowing us to be with you today and talk about the history of Roselawn.
My pleasure.
And my step family.
My pleasure.
I hope the public will realize this is part of the oral history program of the Etowah Valley Historical Society, which you can find online at evhs.org. And this video will be online in the near future. So I hope you're happy with it, and I hope you will and tell your friends to watch it. This was a great event, and this is such a great place to highlight. And thank you for doing that.